All right, everyone. It looks like the Trump administration might be moving to reclassify marijuana to deem it a less dangerous drug. Personally, I see this only as a small step in the right direction. I believe in completely ending the drug war. But then again, I also believe in mail-ordered machine guns, so I may be a little bit of an outlier on these two issues. The drug war has been an abysmal failure. We can look at the rate of people using drugs, selling drugs, etc., and say that the policies that we've had since the 1980s have had virtually no positive impact whatsoever. Maintaining the drug war in its current form, in my opinion, is completely untenable because these substances are going to be used by people. Tobacco is frequently used by people, although its rate is slowing down over time, except among certain youth groups, which is odd. You go to the Netherlands, most of the people you see smoking look to be, college age or under, actually. Really strange. You're never going to eliminate tobacco. You're never going to eliminate booze. You're never going to eliminate marijuana. You're never going to eliminate any of these drugs. The best thing that you can do is rehab the rehab system to try to, because that doesn't work either. I reported on that the other day during my live stream. Rehab the rehab system, try to get people clean as much as you can. Expect most of them to fail, but some of them will succeed. And hopefully people just stick to the occasional bowl or something like that. The fact that we're still prosecuting people and putting them in prison for possessing more than an ounce of marijuana is completely ludicrous. It makes no sense. You look at other countries where weed is effectively decriminalized or outright legalized, like look at the Netherlands. When I went to the Netherlands, I expected to see people flaming up pot all of the time. I expected to smell it constantly because it's legal there. You can walk around with your joint, smoke weed. You can sit on the street with your bong. You can do whatever the fuck you want. Nobody cares. Perfectly legal. It's just that I believe that you can't sell booze and marijuana in the same store. It's a little bit of an oddity. Anyway, I expected that I would smell weed all the time. Instead, I found that I only smelled it a few times, actually. There were a few stoners on the corner near the Jumbo. Other than that, and the hippie couple, which was down the street, they were an obvious hippie couple. Trust me, I'll tell that story some other time, maybe. Other than that, you never really smelled it, actually. Nobody was using it. I think there was one dude that was walking down the street with a joint like literally one time. This is in the course of multiple years. I smelled more pot on the UVM campus. This is before, by the way, it was legal in the state of Vermont. I smelled more pot on the UVM campus than I did in my entire time in the Netherlands over the course of just a year. I got smoked out a couple times. The fact is that if you reclassify marijuana, it's just a small step. I don't think it should be classified at all. I think it should be in the same classification as tobacco and alcohol, mainly. So basically, it's subject to basic regulation, nothing more. And I believe in decriminalizing psychedelics, as well as hard drugs, actually. If somebody's on heroin, their inclination is not to go and get treatment because they're doing something illegal. They might get in trouble for it and get all paranoid and shit like that. If it were decriminalized, they could seek treatment and hopefully get off of the sauce, so to speak. With marijuana, though, you cannot, in good conscience, argue at this point that marijuana is number one, not a gateway drug. We've got ample studies on that. It's actually a reverse gateway drug, and people smoke it for nausea relief and things like that when they're withdrawing from harder substances. Number two, you cannot tell me that it is any more harmful than cigarettes as far as like the tar and the smoke and so forth. And number three, you can't really tell me that it has to be correlated with crime because if it were deregulated mainly, And if it were legal to grow and so forth, why are people going to buy from a cartel when they can grow their own plants? The state of Vermont is a great example. In this state, it is totally legal to grow up to 2 adult plants per person on the property as residents. 2 plants is sufficient to supply the average person's weed needs, unless they're literally chain smoking it, in which case they're probably non-functional and can no longer even afford the seedlings. So they grow their weed in their own backyard or something like that. And so, you do have dispensaries and you have that particular system, and you know that the quality is good. It's been lab tested. State of Vermont seems to think it's necessary to set up an additional $65 million government lab in order to study the weed. I think that this is a ridiculous notion myself because we've already got 2 testing firms set up in the state without taxpayer expense. But whatever. Better than the alternative of keeping it illegal and then spending twice that much money on keeping people in prison for drug possession. It makes absolutely no sense. So I'm hoping that Donald Trump will actually take this quite seriously. I'm hoping that he tells the FDA, look, basically, marijuana is just a vegetable anyway. It should be part of everyone's salad or something like that. I think that he will too. He was actually one of the earliest people who had any socio-political connections. Liberals won't admit to this, but it's an interesting factoid to embrace medical marijuana. He said, "Well, yeah, I've got friends. They use medical pot, and it helps them." So he came out fairly early in favor of these things. This is back in the early 2000s. This is ancient history. It's like 20 years ago, which is very interesting. I note that at the same time, most members of the Democratic Party still opposed the concept of medical marijuana. People have memory hold this, not without good reason, propagandistic purposes. The fact is that marijuana, unless it's laced with fentanyl or something like that, is probably not going to kill you. You're probably not going to get your door punched down by the cops with a battering ram at 3 a.m. because you had a joint. That's probably not going to happen. Most states at this point have de facto decriminalization. That is, that it's technically illegal, but they're not going to pursue the case. They're not going to do anything about it. They're like they'll roll their eyes unless there's some other separate complaint. They'll roll their eyes and then they'll just roll down the road, which is a good thing. But reclassifying it in and of itself, while very helpful, does not end the drug war. There are other psychedelic substances of various kinds that should be being tested in a medical context, especially, and they're generally not allowed to actually test them. We've had tests from all around the world, especially Scandinavia, places like Norway and Sweden and so forth, where they've successfully used things like ibogaine, psilocybin, LSD, and so forth for mental health purposes and for pain relief purposes and addiction treatment. Psilocybin and especially ibogaine are indicated with that. Ayahuasca would be the same thing, DMT. They've done all sorts of studies. They've had great success, generally speaking. The United States, which is supposed to be the land of liberty, ironically, is one of the most hostile nations towards doing even scientific research into mind-altering substances. I personally think that that's a problem. So hopefully marijuana will be reclassified. It's one small step for mankind, one giant leap for hopefully eventually ending the drug war. That's about all. Peace out.